Emberclaw Chronicles, Chapter 8, The First Tower. Morning arrived quietly beyond the village. The road stretched forward like a pale ribbon through the hills, bending gently as it disappeared toward the distant mountains. Behind them, the village had already grown small. The rooftops clustered together like a handful of pebbles beside the winding river, and the narrow streets were no more than thin gray lines in the early light. Lyra stood for a moment on the crest of the hill. She turned back once more. From here, she could still make out the barber shop near the square, its small sign barely visible beneath the brightening sky. It felt strange to leave a place behind so quickly. "It looks smaller already," she said quietly. Emberclaw followed her gaze. The golden dragon stood beside her, with his wings folded neatly along his back, his scales catching the warm glow of the morning sun. "That," he said thoughtfully, "is generally what happens when one travels away from something." Lyra glanced at him. "You know what I mean." "Yes," Emberclaw said calmly, "but I enjoy pointing out obvious things from time to time. It gives conversations a pleasant sense of structure." Seraphine stepped forward beside them. Her silver scales shimmered softly in the morning light, each one reflecting a faint hint of blue and pearl as the wind moved across the hillside. "The instrument," she said gently. Lyra nodded and reached into the satchel slung across her shoulder. Wrapped carefully in cloth lay the brass device the barber had given them the night before. The metal surface was worn smooth with age, the engraved markings softened by time, but still beautiful in their careful design. Lyra unfolded the cloth and lifted the instrument into the sunlight. At the center of the circular frame rested a thin needle, balanced delicately on a narrow pivot. For a moment, the needle was still. Then it trembled. Slowly, it began to turn. Emberclaw leaned closer. The needle rotated in a small circle before settling into a steady position, pointing toward the distant hills. "Well," Emberclaw said thoughtfully, "that appears to be rather certain about its opinion." Seraphine studied the instrument quietly. "These devices were created by the early tower keepers," she said. "They respond to disruptions in the light signals that once passed between the towers." Lyra looked toward the hills again. The slopes rolled away in layers of green and shadow, rising gradually toward the mountains. "So something up there has changed," she said. Seraphine nodded once. "Yes." Lyra wrapped the instrument carefully and placed it back in the satchel. Then she turned toward the road. "Then we follow it." Emberclaw lifted his wings slightly, stretching them in the warm air before folding them again. "A perfectly reasonable plan," he said. The road beyond the village felt wider and quieter than the one they had left behind. Tall grasses covered the hills, swaying gently beneath the steady wind. The sky stretched broad and cloudless above them. For a long time, the three companions walked without speaking. Birds circled overhead. Small insects hummed through the grasses. The distant, Mountains slowly grew larger. Occasionally, Emberclaw lifted himself into the air with a powerful sweep of his wings. He glided ahead of the others for a short distance before circling back again, his golden scales flashing briefly in the sunlight. Lyra watched him return one time and shook her head slightly. "That does look easier," she said. Emberclaw landed lightly beside her. "Yes," he replied calmly. "Flying generally is." Seraphine's teal blue eyes glimmered with quiet amusement. "And yet," she said, "you have walked most of the morning." Emberclaw tilted his head. "Well," he said thoughtfully, "one must allow companions to feel useful." Lyra laughed. "That's very generous of you." "I thought so." By midday, the hills had begun to rise more sharply. The road narrowed as it curved toward a forested ridge where tall trees clustered closely together. Their leaves formed deep green shadows across the hillside. The air felt cooler beneath the trees. Lyra stopped near the base of the ridge and removed the brass instrument again. The needle moved much more quickly this time. It spun once, twice. Then it stopped. The thin pointer aimed directly toward the forested slope. Seraphine lifted her head and studied the ridge. "There," she said softly. Lyra followed her gaze. At first, she saw only the trees. Branches shifted in the wind, leaves flashing pale green beneath the sunlight. Then something caught the light. High among the trees, partly hidden by the forest canopy, stood a narrow column of pale stone. Lyra narrowed her eyes. "A tower," she said quietly. Seraphine nodded. "Yes." Emberclaw's green eyes brightened slightly. "Well now," he said, "that appears promising." The climb up the hillside was steeper than the road had suggested. The forest thickened quickly around them. Branches tangled overhead, and the sunlight filtered down in narrow shafts that moved slowly across the forest floor. Fallen leaves crunched beneath Lyra's boots. Emberclaw moved ahead easily, weaving between the trees with quiet confidence. Seraphine followed just behind Lyra, her silver wings occasionally brushing against low branches. As they climbed higher, the tower gradually revealed itself. It stood on a small clearing near the ridge crest. The structure had once been elegant. Even now, its circular stone walls remained mostly intact, rising high above the surrounding trees. But the top of the tower had collapsed. Large stones lay scattered around the clearing, like fallen fragments of a broken crown. Vines crept through the cracks in the stonework. Pieces of metal lay, half buried in the leaves. Lyra slowed as they approached. "This must be it," she said softly. Emberclaw stepped into the clearing first. He turned slowly, studying the ruins with thoughtful curiosity. "The first tower," he said. Seraphine moved toward the scattered metal fragments. "These towers once held great mirrors," she explained gently. Each mirror captured the light and reflected it to the next tower across the land. Lyra looked upward toward the broken top of the tower. The open sky shone through the jagged gap where the mirror platform had once stood. "The mirror's gone," she said. Seraphine knelt beside one of the fallen pieces of metal. "It has been removed," she said quietly. Emberclaw crouched near another fragment of the tower mechanism. His claw brushed lightly across the curved metal arm. Then he paused. "Well," he said softly. Lyra stepped closer. "What is it?" Emberclaw lifted his claw slightly. A narrow groove ran across the metal joint. The cut was clean and precise. Seraphine examined the mark. "That was done deliberately," she said. Lyra felt the quiet forest grow still around them. "So someone destroyed it." Emberclaw stood slowly and turned toward the broken mount where the mirror once rested. "Yes," he said calmly. His eyes moved across the clearing. The scattered metal, the empty frame, the carefully sliced joints that once held the mirror in place. "This tower did not collapse," he continued. "It was dismantled." Seraphine rose beside him. "These structures were designed to endure storms and centuries," she said. "They do not simply fall apart." Lyra looked slowly around the clearing. "Why would anyone take it apart?" she asked. For a moment, none of them spoke. The wind moved softly through the treetops. Leaves rustled across the forest floor. Then Emberclaw lifted his head. "The towers once carried light signals across the entire realm," he said thoughtfully. "If one tower stops working, the signal changes," Lyra said quietly. Seraphine nodded. "Yes." Lyra looked again at the empty mount where the mirror had once stood. "So the instrument is showing us the towers someone has altered." "Yes." Emberclaw's gaze drifted toward the distant mountains beyond the trees. His expression had grown more thoughtful. "Well," he said quietly, "this adventure has just become considerably more interesting." Lyra crossed her arms. "You're enjoying this?" Emberclaw considered the question carefully. "Yes," he said calmly. Seraphine's wings shifted slightly as the breeze passed through the clearing. "If someone has begun altering the towers," she said, "then other towers may have been changed as well." Lyra looked toward the mountains again. The distant peaks rose high against the sky, silent and mysterious. "Then we keep going," she said. Emberclaw nodded once. "Yes." He glanced back at the ruined tower. "The first tower," he said thoughtfully, "and almost certainly not the last." The wind moved softly through the broken stones, and far beyond the hills, another tower waited, dragon.